Hello, good afternoon. Nice to have you back. And now, before we tackle more challenges on that table, we have asked the team from the City of Leuven in Belgium to share their interesting experiences. And I heard him in Stuttgart in June, and that was really interesting, but probably they have some news during that period. So that's really get inspired, and maybe there is something already tried in Leuven that you can use. So the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. It's indeed, I'm really glad that I can be in this workshop, also to give some ideas of what is possible as a city. And in my presentation, I really would like to focus on the challenges that I also heard this morning in the session of urban mobility. And in Leuven, we have the same challenges. So you will see how we are dealing with it. But the key issue in the approach of Leuven is that what is possible on the local level, you need really to find coalitions, because as a local city, you can't solve it alone. And so it's very important in that perspective. I also will focus on how we are dealing with the issue of smart mobility. And like Curle explained, I already did a similar presentation on the Urban Future Conference in Stuttgart. And for those who don't know it, Stuttgart is the Porsche city. And the picture which I show here, it's explaining perfectly what my presentation is about. The last decades, it is a choice for what kind of transport means we give what kind of space. And if you try to think, this is a way space management in urban mobility, in mobility has been implemented in the last decades. And we know this is not a smart space management solution. So in the presentation, I give what we mean with smart mobility. Smart mobility is smart space management. We start with focus on urban planning, urban development, but also using technology in optimizing the use of our scarce public domain. So it is important I use technology, I use driven policy to optimize our public domain and how it is used, and with which kind of transport mode. And first of all, City of Leuven, a small city of 100,000 inhabitants with 65,000 students above. So we are a very important university city. We are the fastest growing city in Belgium. And this has to do with the fact that Leuven is positioned 20 kilometers east of the Brussels capital region. So we are in the slipstream of that metropole. But of course, we are also a very dynamic city because of the university, because of a lot of spin-off activities. So innovation and being a city, using the City of Leuven as a living lab, you'll notice it also in my presentation. But important, and just explaining Leuven, so east of the Brussels capital region, when you look to the Flemish region, you have Leuven, Antwerp, Ghent, and Brussels. 80% of the economy is being done in that area. So it's a very urbanized area where, of course, congestion is a big challenge. We as a city, we are also the president of the Polish City and Region Network. It's a European network which is really focusing on innovation in urban transport. So we try to learn from each other, we try to cooperate with each other. And as we are the presidents, we are also hosting the annual conference end of this year on 29th and 30th of November in Leuven. So if you want to see what I am going to explain in my presentation, you are welcome to come to Leuven end of November. Other elements. The City of Leuven is selected as one of the 100 climate neutral or mission cities, the smart climate neutral and smart mission cities. So in Europe, there have been selected a little bit more than 100 mission cities. And Europe has earmarked these cities that did a candidature, because these cities should become the front runners in showing how you can become a climate neutral city within 2030-50. Leuven is one of these cities. This means at this moment we are making a climate city contract. What is important in such a climate city contract? We are deciding what are the impact projects on circular economy, on housing, on urban planning, on mobility, so on different the policy fields. That is not so difficult. What are the impact projects? But in that climate city contract, you have to make a contract with all kinds of external partners that take a commitment, not just a commitment, I am going to do it, but also a financial commitment. So that is what we are finalizing now. And it is not new in Europe, making commitments with partners. As 10 years ago, the City Council already had the ambition, we want to become climate neutral in 2030. And 10 years ago, the City of Leuven has founded a non-profit organization called Leuven 2030. And Leuven 2030, it's a non-profit organization which has only the task to find coalitions. Coalitions between the city, the companies, the academics, and the citizens. So to become a member of the non-profit organization as a company, as a research institute, you have to submit an action plan where you say, these are my commitments to help the city become climate neutral by 2030. At this moment, this organization is a strong catalyst in Leuven, with more than 600 members, going from the biggest brewery in the world to the university. So a lot of companies are member, and they made a commitment. This is what I am going to do to help Leuven become climate neutral. There has been made a roadmap. This is the chapter on mobility. On every chapter, we have pointed out what kind of action should be done on the timeline till 2050. So we know we have first to do that action, and then we can do that to become climate neutral. So that roadmap is the guideline for all the partners that made a commitment in the Leuven 2030 Association. And then very simple mobility challenges. This morning, I also heard the same challenges of other cities. We are a growing city. This means the number of trips is going up. And Leuven, we are in a very congested area, an urbanized area. The increase of congestion is going faster on the road network of Leuven than Brussels and Antwerp, because we are such a dynamic city where more inhabitants, more students, more jobs. The positive news is on the level of our city itself, on the domain of Leuven, the model shift is not so bad. Almost 50% of our transport trips are walking, cycling, or public transport. But when I'm zooming out to the border communities, car dependency is going up. When I zoom out to the region, car dependency is the only transport mode. And 75% of the car trips in Leuven are caused by people that come from the region to Leuven. So if I want to solve the congestion problem, I have to zoom out to the region. So the first step is cooperation and doing decisions on a regional scale. This is why the City of Leuven is now cooperating in the east side of the Brussels capital region with 33 municipalities in making decisions where the future urban developments have to go to. And we know also based on traffic modeling that all the future urban developments, the growth that we expect, that we know also if we don't do anything, if we go for the trend, we will be in the number of trips in a total lockdown in 10 years. So to avoid that kind of lockdown, we know that we have to do a model shift towards cycling and public transport. The other positive news is, based on the actions that we have been doing in the last 10 years, we see in the last 3 years a trend, a breaking point, that car ownership in Leuven, it has been increased the last 50 years, is at a breaking point. And every year, private car ownership is going down, not only in the city center, but in all the districts of Leuven. That's a positive news because private car use is taking space and we have to do smart space management. The ambition that we have, the challenge that we have is to avoid the total lockdown. We have to double public transport trips, to double cycling trips by 2030. And then we manage to organize our car traffic. It is going to happen with our fingers in the nose regarding cycling. It's a huge challenge regarding public transport. I explained, so what I was telling, first step is we have to organize that on the regional scale. Two elements which we are doing on the regional scale, deciding where future urban developments should be located. On this map, you see all the red dots. This is expected extra urban development, which we know it's going to happen in Leuven, and we try to have it in Leuven, but also to reallocate it on the different smaller municipalities which are connected to a strong cycle network and which are connected to a future high-level public transport network. So that connection of future urban developments, connecting it to the urban nodes and our transport network, that's the idea of the RegioNet project. The RegioNet, which is on the region of Leuven, a strategic project. What I was explaining, based on cycling, we will reach that challenge with the fingers in the nose, because in last years there has been invested a lot in the cycle network, both on local level in the city center, but also on the level of the cycle highways. This is a picture of cycle highway which is connecting the city of Leuven, the railway area, to the city of Tienen. It's around 30 kilometers. And along that X, there are also a lot of activities. This example, I'm going to go a little bit faster in that. It's a focus on the urban area, where we didn't build just a highway because it's an urban environment, but where we shifted a road, which was this main road, to the level of the railway, which is a little bit lower. And this road has been shifted to this place. And we have here now a traffic calming cycle street, which is part of the cycle highway. So it's also important, traffic calming, we don't have space to separate everything. So on that part of the cycle highways, we are mixing it. If we can make a traffic calming zone on that place. And that has been built now, so this highway has been shifted towards the railway. We have given in return a bicycle street with a new park, the Park Bellevue in Leuven. And then when you go through it, so cars are allowed, but in the design, we organize it that way that it is easy to cycle with 2 or 3 people on the road. It's not allowed that cars are passing the cyclists because it's a cycle street. But in the design, if you are a car driver, it's 2 meters. It's perfectly to ride on a narrow street of 2 meters, but when you go fast, it's not so easy. So then you come in that cobblestone thing, so you are going to drive slow. So that's also in our design of some elements that we try to have that behavior. And then the normal highway element of cycle highways in Flanders. Then the second point, this public transport, just an example. The challenge is much more complicated, because the increase of public transport trips in Leuven in the last 15 years, it multiplied by 5. Because also the offer of public transport has been increased. But when you look to the public transport network, of course, the railways go to the railway station, but also all the buses go to the railway station, to one main bus hub. It has a maximum capacity. And so we have a unipolar public transport with 1 node. This has a limited capacity. So we have to transform the public transport to a multipolar public transport with more exchanging nodes. And such kind of a network has unlimited growth possibilities. But when you go from an unipolar public transport to a multipolar, you have more interchanging. So you have to guarantee clockwise public transport. And this means also changing your infrastructure. So it is a big challenge. We made a plan how it could work, but of course we still have to build it. And just one X where we do it, and where also again smart and technology issues are going to play a role. On this X between Leuven and Diest, we want to have a high-level clockwise public transport. But at this moment, it's a very congested road with very narrow space. If we succeed in giving a clockwise service, they go from 24 minutes through the city area of Leuven in 6 minutes. So it would be a spectacular extra service level for public transport users. But outside the city, you have space to build roads for buses, roads for cars, roads for cycling, but not in the city center. So what we are doing now, urban development projects are focused on the new bus stops, but this road is going to be redesigned with 1 lane, because we don't have more space, which is used in both directions. And when you have the 4 stops in the clockwise service, they will pass each other at the bus stop. Again, you need technology and you need clockwise service to avoid this. This will give some problems. But it is possible to organize it if you have a strong traffic management system to have that. So that was the part on the regional level. But of course, we are cities, so we need to also act on local level. One of the plans which has been exemplary in Leuven is the so-called traffic circulation plan, which has been implemented in 2016. And in 3 years' time, we succeeded in having an increase of cycling in the city center by almost 44%. At this moment, the model shift in the city center is around 50% of trips are made by bicycle. Car trips went down, public transport went up, and visitors didn't left Leuven. Because of course, the shopkeepers, they were really shocking and were really annoyed, but we could also, based on countings, pre-after, show Leuven is still living. And we did a simple traffic circulation plan to avoid that through car traffic is not possible anymore. We doubled the pedestrian zone. Around the pedestrian zone, we organized a zone where only residents can park on street. So we avoid also surging traffic in that zone around the pedestrian zone. And for the rest, we did upgrade of public domain. Technically, we are going to organize it with ANPR cameras, where you have also access rights for different users to do the deliveries or people that are living in the city center. So we organize it through such an ANPR shield, so-called urban vehicle access rights, where almost every city in Europe is now acting with. We also explain it very clearly on what time of the day, what kind of transport mode has access to the city center. We have done a cycle zone for the whole city center. This means in 70% of the roads of the city center, cars are not allowed to pass cyclists. Cyclists take the whole space because we don't have space enough to offer separate bicycle lanes. And we do have too much bicycles to put them on a cycle lane. So it's important at a certain moment, you have to share modes, do traffic calming and organize it this way. And a lot of cycle infrastructure project that we also did. Also for the buses. With the buses, we made a gentleman's agreement. You can only drive 20 kilometers an hour in the city center when we implement the plan to have more a better feeling, because there is a lot of protest against the buses. They agreed 20 kilometers an hour in the city center. And because of the plan, they go quicker, because the congestion is not anymore on that axis. So slower buses are quicker for the clients. So it's also a win-win. Then electrification, also taxis get extra access rights in the city center. Other taxis, but also on traffic or on parking management. And here the digital twin and all the digital things are coming up. On on-street parking, we offer, for organizing our parking management in the future, in the past we had a normal parking management system. We have now upgraded that to a traffic management system, which has the capability also at a certain moment to give in-car information. So the steps from parking management to give real-time info on the parking offer to a traffic management system is you collect a lot of other data where you can give really in-car route advice, knowing if we know what kind of trip that visitor wants to make, based on the information that we collect with our traffic management system, we can give them in-car information. So that's a way of lifting up that service level. Also for on-street parking, we have the core of on-street parking is now also digital tools, and you need to digitalize your on-street place to know what kind of parking rights there are on the street. An example here, around the core of the pedestrian zone, also we offered shop and go parking places where it is allowed to park for free for 30 minutes. And it is controlled by a sensor, because we wanted also to offer for some people that have to go for a short time in Leuven to pick something up or to bring something, that they are not obliged to go into the off-street parkings, but for a limited time. And you can control it with sensors. For people for inhabitants, they have to pay for getting a permission on street. An elephant in the room, also in Leuven. Having less parking places on street, it's politically not so easy to decide that. And so at this moment, still, the amount of space that the standstill car is taking is huge. It was in that plan also not so obvious to shift it to other modes. So we still are really discussing about the crumbles when we are discussing about less on-street parking. And at a certain moment, we really have to slice the bread. That's my message. But also in Leuven, it's really difficult. Important element, how we can, what is also a key element is shared mobility. And car sharing is in Leuven the way for making room for cycling and walking. Why I tell that? For every shared car, I have 10 private cars that are disappearing. That they disappear. So this means car sharing is the best parking management and public area management area to lower the parking pressure on street. And also we see that car sharing is really exploding at this moment. 4 in 100 inhabitants are doing car sharing. Car ownership is going down, like I explained. And we see every year an increase of car sharing. Other issue, it is bike sharing. How we are dealing with that? In Leuven, it is an explicit choice that free floating bikes and free floating steps are not allowed. It is an explicit choice that bike sharing is part of the pre and after trip for longer public transport trips. And only for specific groups, we give bike sharing systems that are useful. The key to more cycle use is not more bike sharing systems, but is bike ownership. So for bike ownership, it's really important. And so on the short distance, bike ownership and walking. On the longer distance, you remember that the car, 75% of car trips are caused by the region. There, the public bikes are the connecting thing. I don't know how much time I have still left.
No, none. So we need to summarize and then we
So but that's one system, that bike sharing on our public transport interchanging points. For specific target groups, bike sharing for children, the Velo KD project is families have children and they grow up every year. So we want to avoid that families have to buy a new bike every year. For a renting price of €60 a year, they get a full option service level bike and they can change it next year when their child is growing up. It's a very successful project, also for social groups. People that have a low income, they get a low price and also have that bike. The buggy booker system. What is the buggy booker system? We want young families with very small children that can't cycle long, that they come with a bike, children on the behind, they can't take a poussette. So we give them one. So to avoid that these young families take the car with the children and so. So this is also working. Also swap bike, it's more a leasing bike where you pay €17 a month. If your bike is broken, it will be swapped by another one. So it's a full service renting bike. And then last but not least, cargo shared cargo bikes. On neighborhood level, we also offer a bike sharing system of cargo bikes. Why? Because it can also replace the second car or the first car, which is taking a lot of space. And also cargo bikes take a lot of space. So cargo bike system is also successful. it's offered by Cargero, but the City of Leuven is also paying part of the service to get it accessible for all the users. And then free floating. Free floating is suggesting a service level door to door. There is only one transport mode who can claim that service level, and it is walking. So we organize our public domain. We are the local government, and we are the market master of the public domain. So we decide how our public domain should be used, and there are a lot of regulations which we have implemented. So if you are a shared mobility supplier, we need them. If you fulfill the service levels that we have worked out, also on giving data, interoperability with other systems, we define service levels. If you fulfill them, you are free to use our public domain. If you don't fulfill them, it's forbidden to use our public domain. So this is the way we try to cluster the shared mobility services, clustering it on mobile points, which in the visualization, we also make it clear. We call it in Leuven the hop-in points. And hop-in points are the places where we have a clustering of the shared car, the connection with the bus, and the bike systems. Also on the level of that's the hardware, but of course also on the level of the software, the so-called MaaS apps, you can also interfere as a local authority, because there are a lot of MaaS apps. And some of the apps, they decide, I only work with these mobility suppliers. No problem that they exist, but they don't get money from me to have a lower price. Only the MaaS apps that fulfill some service levels that we define, only the shared mobility suppliers that fulfill service levels that we define, they get co-funding from the city to shift up the service level or to have a lower price for our users. So that's important. We are in control, and we have to do that because we have to decide how our public domain is used. Last issue, I was explaining about this digitalizing, and that's what we are doing. We are coding the curb. And what is coding the curb? The curb, that's the curb. The curb is now used for vehicle storage. But if we code it and we decide on what kind of use, on what kind of day it can be used, also at a certain moment of the day, it can be used for doing deliveries. At another certain type of the day, it can be used for parking. And when you do that coding of your curb in a digital platform, then you can optimize the use of your public domain. We have been doing a lot of test projects, and these are also challenges that we try to implement. They are not mainstream yet, but going from the idea of being a parking city to pick up, drop-off cities, where we can also have more or less cars on the streets, and using it for other issues. And a field where it is very useful, it's smart city logistics. At this moment with bpost, we have a network of delivery boxes on neighborhood level to avoid, also to bundle these kind of trips. But we also tested in Euro EIT Urban Mobility Funding Project how this can be used in a flexible way so that a logistical player gets a time frame and a location where he gets the guarantee that it is a free place to do the delivery. So that's also towards logistical service, more a service level that is going higher. He has not the stress, do I have a parking place? You can do that with this kind of curb management. The same of access control. I was explaining, we have now the pedestrian area. with delivery frames when you can enter or not. But dynamic access control is the next level. Dynamic access control, we can also decide if the eco score of your vehicle has a certain thing, or if your loading degree of the vehicle is better, if your drop density is high, you get more access rights than if it is not. Also, that is what we have been doing in a European project, building a rule engine which is connecting with logistical players, eco score, loading degree, drop density, you need that data. And the rule engine is going to give more or less access rights if they fulfill these criteria. So that's also optimizing the use of your access to the city and use of the public domain. We did a lot of tests with local players to do these tests. It's not mainstream yet, but we know it can work. I'm going to skip that. That's a project which we are doing with cycle logistics, but I want to go to the last part. It is how we are clustering car traffic. The decision that every city makes is where we are going to cluster the high levels of traffic on the main roads. Everything what is black is our main roads. And everything what is white, we don't want a lot of car traffic in these zones. It should be traffic calming zones in between. You use traffic circulation measures by that, but if it is not possible to solve it, you use technology. And here is an example. It is an area where we have a lot of through traffic. You don't want that kind of traffic in that kind of streets. We have put 2 ANPR cameras where all the people that live here, they get access. They are on the white list of the camera. All the people that are not living here, they don't get access. They are on the blacklist. So you can also doing in a smart way that kind of traffic management for avoiding through traffic on the local roads. And then last but not least, the citizens. How you can really practically involve citizens. One of the projects and also one of the instruments which has been created in a spin-off company in Leuven is the so-called WeCount sensor. And WeCount sensor is just a sensor you put as an inhabitant on your window, and it's counting traffic. It's counting traffic. The WeCount sensor, it's now implemented in a lot of European cities, but what is interesting, in the city district of Kesselo, where we did also a mobility plan, we gave these sensors to the citizens. They collect data, and they can come into discussion with the city. Oh, in my street, it's really horrible. Look to the data. But we can then explain, look, we have a lot of streets in Leuven that are similar with your street. Look to these data. So the emotional discussion of my street is the worst in all the world is becoming a little bit less emotional. It's more rational. And based on that data, it's open data. Everyone can use it. We also use it ourselves to optimize our traffic models. But you can have more rational discussions. Also collecting data on where cyclists are going, how fast they are going. They are helping us, for instance, with this map. This map is showing when you are faster with a bike to go to the railway station. So when you live here, it's faster with the car. When you live here, it's faster with the bike. What you see on this map is that the cycle highway of Leuven to Brussels is already built because it's faster with the bike in that area to get in the city center. But it is also helping us to locate our parking rights, parkings. It's of course not the only way how we make that decision, but these kind of data help us where it would be smart to locate our parking rights. And what I mean with this citizens' engagement, the social power, it is vital. In that Leuven 2030 approach, citizens are one of the partners. And on a regular basis, Leuven 2030 is organizing workshops where businesses, academics, and citizens are gathering. The idea of the traffic circulation plan, it was not from the head of the city council, it was from the head of one of these workshops. So these partners asked to the city, we want to have a traffic circulation plan. And it was based on that we have been implementing it. What I explained just, it's a technical plan. And in the perception, you take something from the citizens and from the shopkeepers. So you have also to give something back. And what you give back is upgrade of the public domain. It's key in organizing such radical traffic circulation plans. And we had 3 lines: the bottom-up strategy, where citizens could come with ideas; the co-creation strategy, where citizens were guided or with people of the team of Leuven, how you could make a redesign; and the real city investments, where we had to really make a strong and complex redesign of public domain. Examples of the bottom-up are a square in the city center with a lot of schools, and the schools asked, we wanted car-free. We knew we hadn't the budgets to do a complete makeover on short term, but we gave them some elements to do a temporary redesign, but the decision, I wanted car-free, came from the schools and from the inhabitants around that square. And now it looks like that. It still looks like that because the budget for the makeover of that square, it's not in short term there. Then other example, co-creation. Come up for your neighborhood, as it's called. There, the citizens are guided by colleagues of me of how you can do a redesign. But again, it's always temporarily because we don't have the city budgets to do the complete makeover of a whole city center on short term. And then an example, also trees. We wanted to have more trees, but it was impossible on short term to do the slice in the street. So we had to work with these very fancy concrete boxes. In summertime, we worked with artists together with neighborhoods that could do a design and could place mosaics on the boxes. And we created a co-ownership in upgrading your public domain, where citizens in that street were also a little bit proud. Okay, we were part of upgrading the quality of our public domain. This is really successful in Leuven. It's so successful that the boxes are all made, and that we are now doing it with sitting banks. So it's nice to create co-ownership of people. And then last but not least, the main points where we had to do a cut of through traffic, there it was very important that we do it quick. Quick means make a plan and build the plan. So within 2 years, that was a challenge. On certain places, make the plan, build the plan. And on a lot of places, spots, we did a redesign and we built it. So that's also important in doing a technical plan. In the perception, you take something from shopkeepers and people, you have to give something back, and that's upgrading the quality of your public domain. That is how it looked many years ago before. Also in Leuven, it was a very car-oriented city. The heart of the city center of Leuven was the biggest roundabout of the whole region. All the access went to the church, which is in the heart of the city. And I give a last 3 pictures. This is a picture of 1979. And what is this picture about? It is the first walking street in Belgium. And what has it to do with Leuven? The guy you see here, it is the former mayor of Leuven. The former mayor, I worked with him in the period 2016-19. At that moment, that mayor was 82 years old. In 1979, that guy was 33 years old. He was for the first time in his career deputy mayor of public works. On 33 years, he had the guts to build the first walking street in Belgium. It was a huge protest, of course, by shopkeepers, but they opened it and all the shopkeepers asked, we want also such a street. So what I want to mean by that, besides the technicians, besides the people, you need a strong political leader, because it was also because of that mayor. He was 80 years old when I worked with him. He hadn't the intention to do that traffic circulation plan. It came up from Leuven 2030, but he noticed, okay, now it's time to do it, and we are going to do it. So that's more or less the story I wanted to bring.
Sincere thanks. Yeah, unfortunately, we are quite out of time,
Yes,
but I'm
right.
really grateful for those really practical examples, how things can be done and have been done and what are the effects. So I hope you got some ideas, especially the kind of mobility group, but also other groups, how you can really do things. And for all of the things, you don't need millions. You can really do something on more an initiative and smaller budget basis.